Welcome to QAC 2023 GAAP event, Global Accessibility Awareness Day. We're so glad you were able to join us today, and hopefully you'll learn one or two things today. Okay, let's continue. So we'll go straight to our introductions and agenda. So the first speaker that we have today is Kyle Ron. He's going to introduce himself properly. But himself and myself and the team, we've worked together on a number of projects, and he's a WCAG accessibility specialist. So we'll be talking to us about the impact of non-accessible content. So please let's pay attention as I speaks. And myself, Paul Wede, I'll be talking about digital accessibility and causes of most common accessibility failures on web pages. I won't dive into the technical bit because we don't have time for that today. Just a few overview of just maybe 5 points. And I've told one of our senior specialists, Elena, to also chime in here and there. Also, Carl could chime in during the segment. But once our time is up, we have to move on to the next presenter. So that person is Ali Dawood. I mean, Ali and I, we've been working together for how many years now? 7, 8? And is the best person to talk about this next point, which is the benefits and considerations of the web accessibility business case. And Ali Dawood is the senior director in our professional services team. Okay, let's get started. Over to Carl.
All right, thanks very much, Paul, and welcome everybody. Glad that I was able to be a part of this today. As Paul mentioned, I am a digital accessibility specialist. I've been working in accessibility now for over 10 years. I'm also a person who is blind. I've been blind pretty much my whole life. And so that means that I understand what it means to attack barriers and break them down. Everything from technology to education and physical environments. So that's really been a benefit to me in terms of working with organizations to ensure that they're as accessible and as inclusive as possible. So I'm just going to touch on a few things here today, and then Paul's going to expand on a lot of that. First thing I want to talk about is just the wide variety of disabilities that exist. If you're certainly an able-bodied person and you don't have any members of your family or friends that are people with disabilities, then it's generally not something that you think about because you don't have to. But it is important, especially in the world of business today, to understand that there are a large number of disabilities out there, and digital content especially impacts everybody a little bit differently. So like I mentioned, myself being a person that's blind, I interact with technology and with digital content in a different way than obviously somebody that can see but might have motor skills disabilities. Most people think of disabilities as sort of something that you can see, whether it's a wheelchair or a guide dog, things like this. But of course, there are non-visible ones as well, including a large spectrum of cognitive disabilities, which we're becoming more and more aware of all the time through initiatives like Bell Let's Talk and these types of things. Also, hearing is a big one that's not a visible disability. You may not even realize that someone has a hearing disability unless they tell you. The other important thing when thinking about disabilities is to understand that there are both temporary and permanent categories of disabilities. Myself being blind, that's permanent. Temporary can be anyone suffering from an injury that may need to, utilize crutches for a period of time, or may need to have surgery on their eyes, that type of thing. So basically, my point being is that there's a large number of disabilities out there, and the population of people with disabilities is growing, especially as people get older. Um, as we age, our sight can go, our hearing can go, our physical abilities certainly can go. And being over 40 now, I'm starting to understand that a little bit more. um, so society these days obviously depends more on digital technology and digital content than ever before. Whether it's shopping for things online, we all have Amazon accounts, I'm sure. Digital streaming services, obviously, everybody watches Netflix and Prime, that type of thing, or just relying on your phone in terms of mobile apps getting around, navigation, all these types of things. So we've never, had such an importance be placed on technology than we do right now, and that means that considering accessibility of digital content and of the technology is becoming more and more important. Here in Canada, we have a couple different pieces of legislation that govern accessibility. In Ontario, we have the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. That is provincial legislation that considers physical environments, policies and procedures, accessible communications, and that of course involves digital content as well. And then we have the Accessible Canada Act, which is federally regulated and essentially does the same thing, but it's mandates for federally regulated organizations. Big part of the governance for accessibility, both in Canada and the United States, and becoming more and more global, is the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, which Paul briefly mentioned. And the WCAG is basically a set of criteria that digital content is supposed to meet or exceed, and that is designed to ensure that websites, apps, documents, PDF files, that they're accessible for everybody. Society relies on digital content. Barriers: So when we're talking about accessibility and barriers to people with disabilities in terms of digital content, what do we mean? Well, there are basically four main functions under the WCAG, but most often what we're talking about is the operability and understandability of a piece of content. So let's take a web page, for example. If you have content that is specifically only accessible by using a mouse, that means that anybody that can't use a mouse can't access that content. So that would be me. That could also be someone that has a motor skills impairments that can't use a mouse and relies on a specialized keyboard. They're not going to be able to access that content either. It can also mean video content, multimedia content. Obviously, if it's a piece of media that's just, let's say, a piece of music with some screenshots and pictures flying by over the piece of music, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. So how do we overcome that? Well, we overcome that by either providing descriptive video as an option, or we provide a transcript that informs the user what that video content is all about, so that they are then included and can understand what that multimedia is. Basically, by excluding people just through practices that we're all used to and not considering accessibility, you're shutting them out of that content, and it might be something that's really important in terms of what that person is trying to access or what they're trying to obtain by visiting your website. It can also mean improper labeling of items such as buttons, links, drop-down boxes, tabs, etc. I could tell you that a lot of apps are very frustrating because if the buttons and controls are not labeled properly, then I have no idea what that particular item is for, and it often prevents me from accessing content. Not to point fingers, but I can tell you that there are some very large companies, such as Bell Media, for example. The new TSN app for the Sports Network, which is a Bell property, is just brutal. I can barely use it. I use it for very limited things, but there are so many unlabeled buttons and ads that pop up. You can't get rid of them. It's just ridiculous that in this day and age that a large company like that would not invest any resources in ensuring that their content is accessible and inclusive. It just blows my mind. So these are the types of things when designing digital content or procuring third-party content that are very simple but very important to enable users to access that content. You also have to consider the bells and whistles, what I like to call the fancier items when it comes to digital programming and digital content. So we all like to make things as flashy and and catchy as possible. Of course, it's a very loud world in terms of visual marketing and advertising, as we all know. But you have to balance that against the practicality of being able to operate and access that content. So a lot of times when you're designing things using plugins and different programming techniques, you have to ensure that that methodology is going to be sound in terms of its accessibility. There was a time when Flash was sort of a new thing, and everybody fell in love with it. Wow, look at this fancy Flash plugin that I can use. It makes my website look really cool. Absolutely useless for accessibility, just brutal. So it's gotten better now as the technology has improved and accessibility has become more of a consideration. But these are the types of things you have to ask yourself, or that you have to vet through any third party that you're purchasing software from. Have they tested it for WCAG compliance? Have they got a voluntary product accessibility template, which is a VPAT? It's very important to issue those with any type of software that you developed, so that you can inform people of the accessibility of the product and where shortfalls might exist and how to get around them. So these are some of the types of things to consider. The last point that I'll touch on when it comes to accessible design is quite a basic theory, but you'd be surprised how often it gets overlooked. And it applies to both physical buildings or properties, as well as the digital space. And that is to always include accessibility in all phases of the project lifecycle. What I mean by that is, I don't know how many times I've had organizations come to me and say, "Oh, we just built this website and we're launching it on Thursday. Can you make sure it's accessible?" Okay. So you go through it and identify 120 defects with it. And then they come back and say, "Well, geez, we don't have time to fix all this." And had they have either consulted myself or someone like myself in the first place, or had they have considered accessibility from the get-go, then they would have been able to avoid all these things. It's like the old story when cities were built, that roads didn't have curb cuts, right? They just had curbs, and then you had your boardwalks or sidewalks, and there was no access to the road without stepping off the curb. Well, then of course, as society evolved and different things, we decided we needed all these curb cuts, and so had to spend all sorts of municipal dollars putting in these curb cuts. Whereas, had they have been there in the first place, had we been able to foresee the need for them as a society, then I would have saved a lot of money. And digital content is the exact same way. Accessibility should not be an afterthought. It should always be a part of the process, right from the framing and design phases right on through the publishing phase. So that is very important to keep in mind. Of course, if you have any questions after Paul's and Ali are done their bits, I will stick around and be happy to answer them. If you think of things later down the road you're wondering about, you can always reach out through Ali or Paul to myself, and I will be happy to lend any sort of support or answer any questions that I can. All right. Thanks, guys. Everybody enjoy the rest of your Thursday, and enjoy your long weekend.
Thank you very much, Kyle.
Yeah, thank
Kyle,
you
we
so very much.
appreciate it. Appreciate your time and your help, Kyle. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Glad to be here, guys.
Paul?
Yeah, yeah, thank you so very much. And while Carl was doing his presentation, I mean, the salespeople were just messaging me and Ali and asking a few things. I mean, and we are so glad about the interest. I mean, this is the point of today. The point of today is to make everyone aware about accessibility, and we'd like to thank Carl for doing a good job. I mean, thank you for sharing your experience and also diving in depth into what accessibility is all about. I mean, the type of disability we have out there, right? Because sometimes it's easy to see somebody that is blind, or someone that has a form of blindness, or somebody that can't hear. Those visible ones. It talked about the ones you can't see. right? The mental health ones, right? So accessibility covers everyone, all groups. Okay, let's dive into the next topic, which is digital accessibility and causes of most accessibility failures on web pages. In fact, doing our presentation with clients, because this is not, we actually do this frequently with clients because clients really want to know about accessibility, and they get people like myself to talk to them about what we do, about what WCAG stands for. I mean, what are the criteria, the success criteria that we actually test? And that presentation takes 4 days to go through them. I mean, 4 days. I mean, you're looking at 4 hours each day because the client cannot stay for the entire 8 hours. So we spend 4 days and we're doing this for 4 hours each day, and we're trying to do that within 20 minutes. That's not possible, right? It's not technically possible. So we'll just try to do our best just to give us an introduction, a snippet of what we do, and why you as a specialist, as a tester, either functional tester looking into automation or performance, why you need to be aware of this. Because I mean, we're the best people that can advertise the company. I mean, we're the ones that can go out there and say, okay, look, we do this. Why don't you consider doing this? In fact, I challenge all the test leads, all the test manager on this forum. Could you make a commitment to say that you wouldn't say a product can go live? You won't give a green light to a product unless it has been accessibility tested, right? Because accessibility, as Carl mentioned, it is very, very important. You're looking at not just a group of people that we think, oh, they are not then in the minority. These are people that are your brothers or your sisters, my friends, my father, my mothers. These are people that are amongst us, and we should make life easy for everybody in terms of from the perspective of accessibility. So as I said, I mean, I went to the WHO website, which is the World Health Organization, and they mentioned that we have about 1.3 billion people living with some form of a disability. 1.3 billion. So that's roughly 16 to 20%, depending on the total population of the world. That's a huge, substantial number of people that are living with some form of disability. And we should make sure that they have things just like you and I, we do have those things. We can access those things. It's very, very important that we make sure that they too can access the things we have access to. Some common disabilities, according to, even as Carl mentioned, I'll just mention a few ones and then move on. We have visual impairment or disability. We have hearing. He mentioned that. We have motor. We have cognitive, which is what we're not talking about. I mean, before we don't tend to talk about cognitive disabilities or impairments. Now we started talking about that. And there are other forms. He talked about, Carl mentioned permanent and temporary disability. In fact, do you know that when a mother, a father, or whoever is carrying a child, and in one arm I'm doing something else with the other arm, that person is temporarily, I mean, cannot do certain things, right? So you have to consider somebody using their mobile phone, using one finger to move things around when you're talking about accessibility as well. So is a broad scope. It covers a number of things. So digital accessibility talks about every user deserves a first-rate digital experience on the web. Sometimes when I speak to developers and we have this brainstorming session trying to figure out, I mean, how to make things accessible, they tell me, Paul, is it possible for us to just create a second website, dumb down all the CSS, remove anything that is flashy, you know, and just give them that version? And my first reaction is that no, you can't do that because everyone should have a first-rate digital experience. Everyone deserves it. The only time we can say that, okay, yeah, maybe a second version is needed is if from technology perspective, it can't be done. But digital accessibility talks about everyone should get the same experience as somebody like yourself that is listening to me or hearing me right now speak. And the second point I would like to make is that someone with a disability must be able to experience web-based services, content, and other digital products with the same successful outcome. You see, I highlighted that, I made it in bold because it's very, very important. Same successful outcome as those without disability. And the experience, when I talked about experience web-based services, I'm not only talking about websites. The PDFs, the PowerPoint presentation, the Excel documents you send to clients, use your duty to make sure they're accessible. Right? You know, a number of us send reports to clients and we don't even consider accessibility at all. No. In fact, you don't know who is at the receiving end of those reports. Is your duty as somebody in the marketing department? Is your duty as somebody in the sales department? Is your duty as a test manager, as a test lead, to make sure whatsoever final version of a product that you're going to present to a client, you have to make sure it's accessible. And if you don't know how to do that, you can ask my department and my practice about how to do that. That's what we're here for. But it's a responsibility that is the onus is on the person to do that, not the person with some of disability needs to figure out how to read a content. Somebody messaged me saying that, when Carl was talking, we were hearing some things in the background. What was that? I told the person it's JAWS. He's using a screen reader to read things on the screen, right? He's passing on information to him. So imagine you send something that is not accessible to somebody to Carl now, and you didn't consider that JAWS will not be able to get those information and present it to Carl.
Oh, was that coming through, Paul? I
Yes,
didn't
it
realize
was.
that. Oh,
No
geez.
worries.
Okay.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's part of accessibility awareness. We need to know this. I mean, recently, I just gave birth. I mean, for those of you that know, I mean, my wife gave birth, but so that includes myself as well. And my mother-in-law came in to assist, and we were trying to talk to her, and then we knew now that she couldn't hear some words because she's older now. So the next thing we did was that, okay, we need to take you to a hearing specialist to put a hearing aid. So that hits me. Oh yes, I'm in the accessibility department. So this is the type of people I'm doing the thing for. Right? So when somebody makes a video and doesn't consider putting caption, that doesn't consider putting audio descriptive stuff, it makes sense to me now. I mean, it always does before, but yeah, but more so now. Right? So it impacts us. So let's move on because my time is almost done. I love this quote from Jamie Knight. Jamie Knight was previously a senior accessibility specialist for the BBC. I think he has moved on now. He's now a director somewhere else. And he made a statement during one of his accessibility conferences presentation. He said, "We disable people when we don't get it right." I mean, that is profound. He said, the person that decides not to make his content accessible is the person disabling the person. The person is not disabled in the first place. The person does not have a form of disability. You not making your content accessible means that you disable the person. Let it sink in for a second. I hope, I mean, that was profound. So that the onus is on you, the creator, the person creating things, to make sure everything is accessible to everyone. Remember, we're talking about first-rate experience across the board. That's what we're talking about. Okay, let's go on. So, state of accessibility, WebAIM, which stands for Web Accessibility in
Paul,
Mind. Yes.
before you move on to the technical stuff, I just have to say something. So I have a son with autism.
Yes.
Some of you may know that.
Yes.
And he does have cognitive challenges.
Correct.
And I just want to say the passion with which you're speaking is unbelievable. So, like, kudos to you. Like, I'm absolutely loving this discussion. I'm so glad we put it together. But it's a reality, right? Like, we have so many issues that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And as he's getting older and becoming an adult, it's becoming more real to us, right? Because we're looking at, hey, he's going to become an adult. He has to be functioning in the world. So how do we, like, how's this going to affect him? So I wanted to stop you there before you get into the technical stuff.
No worries.
To say thank you so much. I absolutely love this talk, and I'm listening to everything. And Kyle, I appreciate you as well. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. And Paula Fernandez, because it's been recorded, she's a VP of human and people. I believe people and culture. So thank you for chiming in. Okay. Okay. Let's continue. As I said, this talk takes 4 days, so I just have to rush through things. And Ali, once is my time, please stop me. Okay, let's look at the state of accessibility in the world. So WebAIM stands for Web Accessibility in Mind. So these guys were actually one of these first people to start talking about accessibility, and they're not for profit organization. And every year, I think since 2018, they've been having this, they call it 1 million homepages project. So every year they just use their automated tool. It's a scanner. It runs five five things. I mean, five major things, and because, as I said, we love automation. It's just that automation can't do every single thing, right? I mean, that's why we too in QAC, I can announce this. We're also developing ours called Smart Hours. So we plan to release that soon. So they run their scanning just to prove to the world that this is something that people should start talking about. I mean, we've been talking about this for years now, but people should actually start doing things about it. Right. So in February 2023, this year, it was this year's turn. So they analyzed 1 million home pages for accessibility issues, and they found the following: 96.3% of 1 million pages, home pages, not even, a website has maybe 5, 10, 100, 200 pages. Just one page, 96.3% of those home pages had at least one web content accessibility guideline success criteria failure. I mean, Carl briefly mentioned that, right? That is the standard. That's what we use to tell if something is accessible or not. So 96.3% failed. I mean, they had at least one error. And in accessibility, if you failed in one, you're guilty of all. I mean, you should fix everything, right? And then they found that on average, there are 15 number of errors per homepage on average. I mean, some had more, some had less. 50. Right. And to be honest, this is what my team and this is what we do every time, every day. Right. And I can concur that this numbers make sense to me. So causes, let's talk about causes of most common accessibility failures. I mean, Carl mentioned it in passing when he was talking during his 15-minute session. Right. Let's just talk about the ones that WebAIM. So this from WebAIM, what they found. Number one, low contrast text. I'm going to talk about that. I'll let Elena also unmute herself to talk, just to show that the team, we have a specialized team. So low contrast text, 83.6% of those 1 million home pages. So it's 83.6% failed this. So that means that the text on the page the contrast ratio between the background and the foreground is not optimal. It is very, very low, 83.6. Missing image or text. Missing image or text, 58.2%. Empty links. People had links on their web pages that had no text in it. So how does that information get passed to somebody using a screen reader? 50.1%. Missing from input labels, Carl mentioned that. Missing from input labels, 45.9%. And missing document language, 18.6%. Okay, so that is WebAIM. So in my practice, the inclusivity engineering practice or the accessibility engineering practice, whichever one makes sense to anyone that is listening. We also have ours when we've done maybe over 300 or so pages. So we're not the 1 million, but at least we're analyzing a number of our clients' websites. So we found out ours, which is also in line, people were using tags incorrectly. Some things that are headings on the page, section headings, were not being marked as headings. So they're not using the H1s. If I'm going technical, they're not using the H1s, H2s, H3, H4, H6. Or we found out people that actually use this were using that incorrectly. And remember, for those people that are using assistive technology, what they do is that the screen readers that they use, or the things like screen readers, zoom text, and all those things, they actually analyze the code and look for all these H tags. That is how they come up with what to present to the user. So when you're looking at the structure of a page, the way you can outline a page is by looking at all the headings on the page, right?
Hey, Paul, just one quick thing. When you're talking about headings and you're talking about alt tags and all this stuff, one important thing to recognize as well is that not only is it obviously good for accessibility of all kinds, but it also really factors into search engine optimization, and that's something that everybody aims for these days. So the more accessible you make your content and the better tags you have and alt text and everything, it really helps with your SEO. Sorry, man, I just wanted to jump in there.
No, thank you. No, feel free to jump in anytime. It's very, very important. Yeah. And then 2, incorrect design of interactive elements. I mean, Carl mentioned it, tabs, buttons. I mean, you have a button on the page that, okay, sure, we're fancy. We're developing things on the page, and you made a custom button. You use your divs for those that understand, the developers amongst us, you use your divs, you create a button. But now remember that, sure, it looks like a button on the page, but to an assistive technology, it doesn't look like a button until you put in the right role. Until either you use the standard HTML tag, which is button tag, or you use the actual role equals button to identify that something is a button. So even though you've done what your designer, your graphic designer wants, right? You tested it and you're, oh my God, this is good. It's also good for you to check that, is this actually really a button? Is this a tab? Is this a link? Right? So we found out that people, 96.94% of pages that we tested had this issue. For the first one, it was 99.1%. So almost all everyone, every company we test for actually fails that. Number 3, missing or inappropriate image or text. Right? We saw that in WebAIM as well. That was 94.6. Poor code quality, just lazy coding. I mean, when I say this one, it's actually is mind-boggling because it's just a simple check. I mean, sometimes you have stray tags, you have things, attributes that should not belong to that particular item being used. So poor code quality, 94.6%, and empty links, similar to WebAIM as well, but ours was 80.4%. So infographics, you can take that, look at that. I mean, we have this on our website as well. I mean, the reason about infographics is usually they're not accessible. So that's why I had to take the content and make it accessible in text format. So when you're sending something like this to a client, make sure that you remember that, as I said, you're responsible for creating a report that is accessible. Okay, Elena, do you want to unmute yourself to talk about low contrast text? Just briefly, just
just briefly, just
Yeah.
a couple words, like everybody. Like, first of all, I'm like an accessibility tester. I will tell a couple words. Like, we have a set of criteria, and all criteria have common sense. For example, color contrast minimum. Like, it's vital it's especially vital to people with vision disability, like bad vision or color disability, some color disability. And also, many of us, sometimes we cannot read some combinations of colors of text. That is why it's very comfortable when accessibility rule criterions tell us that the minimum contrast should be 4.5. And when the contrast is less than 4.5 for any meaningful text, it means like all people with bad vision cannot read properly this text. And that is why we have to think, first of all, about people with disability. Second of all, we have to remember that accessibility criteria in many countries is a law requirements. And the last thing, but not least, that for all people, it's comfortable when page or application compliant with accessibility rules.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Elena. Thank you. I mean, she's our senior specialist, accessibility specialist.
Yeah,
So thank
I
you.
had a presentation, but unfortunately, I wanted to show some examples, but it's okay. Maybe next time.
Next time,
Yeah.
definitely next time. Don't worry, we'll have more sessions. But thank you so very
Okay.
much. And also need to acknowledge Yana. She's about to speak as well, but then she had an infection, so she can't speak today. I see a hand raised. Do we want to? Okay, go ahead briefly.
Hi.
Yes.
I have a question. So I've been writing websites kind of to build
Yes.
my portfolio. And one of the
Yes.
biggest things I did have issues with was accessibility. For someone who might not know all of the tools that a developer can use to make things more accessible to users, what is there perhaps a resource that might be able to check how accessible your site is?
Yes, I mean, yes and no. I mean, so if you want, if you want to say that, okay, is there a tool that like, checks everything, and you see that, okay, Freddie, yeah, your site needs to fix every single thing. No, there's not. I mean, in SmartEye, we QAC, we are trying to develop something like that, but I mean, I would say that it's not going to check every single thing, but at least it can gives you a hand. And WebAIM that I mentioned has its own tool, checker, that you can actually use to check for some success criteria, and I can share that with you later as well. And we have DQ, one of our competitors, that has their own thing as well, so that could also help you check things, your site improve. So we have different tools. We'll definitely after this meeting reach out to show you some of those tools. But to find something that will check every single thing, no, you still need specialists like Elena to assist you with that. Definitely.
What I would recommend there, just to chip in, Paul, would be to familiarize yourself with w3c.org. It's the World Wide Web Consortium. They're the ones that put together the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, and there's a whole list of different techniques that you can utilize to ensure that you're at least on the right track when you're developing stuff. So in terms of a development template, those techniques are a good place to start.
That's true. Thank you, Carl. Yeah. So Freddie, when you're listening to this meeting today presentation, I'm going to mention the top 5. These are, as I said, you see this on, WebAIM tested 1 million pages, and this is across the board. So if you fix this top 5, you're on your way. You're on your way. You're not there, but at least you'll catch a number of issues and keep an eye on that. Can somebody tell me? Can you see the text I wrote on the slide? Can somebody tell me? Can you read that? Anybody?
Very slightly.
Okay, let me see. What does it say?
Not really.
Only title.
Only title. I mean,
In
come on.
red?
No, it's a low contrast text is bad for everyone.
Oh my. We have some 2020
Good
vision
job.
here.
Wow.
No, but it's really hard to read.
Exactly. That is the point I'm trying to make. Exactly the point. There's a text here that says low contrast text is bad for everyone. But the thing is that this is exactly how people are viewing your pages. If you don't address what Elena is saying. She's saying the ratio between the foreground and the background should be at least 4.5 to 1 ratio for a colorblind. This can be obviously, yes, exactly. So she's talking about 4.5.
And I have a good vision, but I agree with you. But sometimes websites are so bad, have bad contrast text, and even people who has a good vision, hard to read. So
exactly,
I can imagine that the people who have any disabilities, it's completely unreadable.
Exactly. Thank you, Yulia. She's also.
Well, even low contrast text title doesn't have a minimum requirement contrast.
Okay, thank you guys.
I just checked, it's 2.9.
Okay, thank you guys. Let me just finish my presentation. I will be here. I love everyone chiming in. But let me just finish my presentation, guys. But thank you so much for chiming in. You see, when you have specialists on the call, different things are being said, which is good. I love the engagement. Let's just continue. So low contrast text is bad for everyone. So when we're going back to the formal definition of what low contrast is, that means that the foreground, so the text itself, and the background, that means the thing behind it, the ratio between them, when you're looking at the hexadecimal number, so talking to those that of technical, they understand what I'm trying to say, a hexadecimal value of both of them, when you divide it between each other, the ratio has to be 4.5 to 1. If it's 4.5 to 1 above, that means you're good. There are some caveats about 3 to 1 ratio for bigger text. So anything above 24 pixel or 90 pixel bold, it can be 3 to 1 ratio. So which is why this one, it should be 3 to 1 already. Our marketing team, they try to do a good job. So I believe they should meet that. So I'll give it to them for that. So now look at this website. This website has improved. So this is just a 2015 template. They've changed it. So please, this is recorded. So I'm not saying they're bad. They've changed it. But when a designer chooses a gray on gray stuff, it looks cool. It looks modern, but this would fail the guideline. The ratio is bad. So imagine somebody using their mobile device when the sun is shining. I don't know, is this still shining outside? When it's as bright as anything, right? You can't see it. In fact, if you have 2020 vision, as Julia was mentioning, you won't be able to see anything. So you have to consider people in various environments. That is the point of accessibility, right? Not just the standard, we say people with disability. It's for different type of things. Now, high contrast text is good for everyone. We all agree. It is. I gave an example of QAC website. So well done. So this text here, I checked it against this background, meets the criteria. This is above 4.5 to 1 ratio. I mean, for specialists on this forum, I know some of them right now, they're trying to prove to me that this is not 100%. I know them. So they might complain about this side here. But the point I'm trying to make is that even though to you, you can see it clearly, some of these things might still fail the guideline because the guideline is so strict about a ratio 3 to 1. It's not 2.5 to 1. It's not 2.6. It's not 2.95. It has to be exactly 3 to 1. So if we're going to change the hexadecimal of this value a little bit, yes, then, but the point is that high contrast text is good for every one of us. Let's move on. My time is almost up. Missing image alt text, I think we've spoken about this before. So alt text are words that show up in place of an image, right? So somebody that can't see the page, an image is pointless to the person. So you have to make sure you put an alt text behind that page or behind that that image, so that something like a screen reader like JAWS can grab it, and that could be displayed to everybody, right? Or that could be displayed to somebody using a screen reader. So so this is sometimes the case for users with visual impairments who often use screen readers to read alt text aloud. All images need an alt attribute assigned to them. They all need. So Freddie and taking note, make sure all your images have alt text. It doesn't matter if it's bold, if it's decorative or informative, it has to have the alt attribute. What the alt attribute should be is where we come in. We can advise you that, okay, this needs to be informative, this can be null, right, from a technical standard. But we're not talking about this, not meant to be technical presentation. Let's move on. So non-decorative images should have descriptive alt text. Like now, this QAC website, the logo here, this logo is a link, is an image link, right? So now the person that coded this, or one of our marketing person that wrote this, wrote QA Consultant homepage has the alt text for this particular logo link. Yeah, from a technical standard, yes. I mean, it's an image. The functionality of that image is to point to the homepage. Sure, you can say QA Consultant homepage, but let's assume that this logo is no longer a logo link. It's no longer a link, but it's just a logo of the page. We'll need to modify this QA Consultant to be QA Consultants and Alton Company. Right? So that way the person perceiving this logo now understands that you're talking about the logo of the company, which now has an Alton Company included. But from a technical standpoint, because this is an image link, it's just direction to the homepage of QAC. So QA Consultant home is fine. Right? Okay, let's move on. Whoa. So empty links, make sure you don't have empty links. Make sure there are meaningful text associated with your links. It's very, very important. When using images as links, make sure to add more context to your alt attribute as well. I can't dive into that, but please, I mean, the information will be available after the presentation, so you're free to read that. Let's move on. Missing from input labels is very, very important, that every form input has a label. And the reason why we're having this presentation to specialists on this line, to testers, to QAC members, is because you're the one doing some testing. You're testing this for clients. So once you notice some things, oh my God, you're like, oh, I noticed that this thing does not have alt text. You can talk to your test lead. Have we considered accessibility testing? It's just as simple as that. And then the test leads can tell the company and say, okay, we noticed just these 5 pointers. Maybe you want to come to give us the work, give the inclusivity engineering practice the work to test your product and advise you, right? That's the reason why we're having this. You might be like, well, I don't design a website. I don't do that. Why are you telling me about this? It's just that when you're doing your functional tester, you're running your script and you notice some of these things, the contrast is poor. These are things you can say, you can open out and tell people and say, okay, before we can say this should go live, let us consider fixing these accessibility issues. Because accessibility is not just for one person, it's for every one of us. And with that, I think I'll pass on to Ali. My time is up. Over to you, Ali.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Thanks for all of that. And these are really great examples. And just want to reiterate on, the opportunities that we have when we're doing our testing. I know when we're doing functional testing, it may not necessarily be in scope to talk about accessibility, but in some ways, we have a duty to raise those kinds of things to our clients, and let them know, and then see if there's an opportunity there. All right, great. All right, so I wanted to start off by letting you know that, we've been helping our clients with inclusivity services since 2012. Back when AOTA had a requirement for you to be level A compliant, back in January of 2014, we started having clients coming to us and asking us, well, what does that mean? What are we supposed to do? How can you guys help us? Are we compliant right now? And, starting back then, we started a client, and that was actually, from one of the ministries in the Ontario government that came to us back then. And our client list has only grown since then, with AOTA and beyond AOTA, even Section 508 in the US. We have clients in the UK that are asking us for help. So, there's a sampling of clients here that you can see some logos, but it's a really important piece of work that we're doing, and we're getting asked by a lot of clients to help them with inclusivity, and there's all kinds of things we're doing beyond testing as well, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But it's a very popular service that we offer, a really important service that we offer, and one that a lot of clients are recognizing as being important. It's still growing in importance, but it is growing, which is a good thing. Next one, please. All right, so in terms of the kinds of services that we offer, and we want to let you all know, because you guys are out there in front of our clients every day. So you may have, you may find some issues with accessibility. They may ask you, what do you guys do? Do you guys help with these kinds of things? Well, the answer is yes, right? And I dare to say that we are the best in the world at this kind of work, right? At inclusivity, at WCAG conformance testing. There's nobody that touches us. Our team is the best. So you should feel free to have confidence to go out there to your clients and tell them that we have this capability, and engage our team, and you won't be disappointed. So some of the kind of work that we do in the way that we help our clients are things like helping them with audits, just to give them a quick check and let them know whether they pass or fail with accessibility with WCAG. We do detail testing. So this is where we give you all of the issues that exist on your web pages or in your documents or in your videos that have to do with accessibility. User experience testing by our specialists with lived experience of disability. So engaging people like Kyle, who are experts at this, right, as a part of our teams to support us in giving that specialized user experience information. We do assistive technology functional testing. So testing whether screen readers work well with content, whether, Zoom text, or whether, all kinds of different assistive technologies. We do functional testing for those based on, do they meet the WCAG criteria with the assistive tech or user experience. So those are other services that we offer. We actually help with remediating content. So either we'll help with, providing consulting when when developers are fixing things. We'll make sure they fix it right the first time and they're not breaking other things while they're doing it. We actually help with performing remediation, especially now being a part of Alton. We have access to all kinds of additional development related capabilities. So this is something that we're building now, is the ability to actually help to remediate the defects, right? And we also fix documents and provide video transcripts and things like that as well. So that's another capability we have. Freddie asked a question about tools. So there are some clients out there who just use tools, and they get the reports and they're filled with all kinds of false positives, false negatives, things that don't make sense, things that they don't know what's important, what's not important. So clients come to us and say, hey, can you guys help us understand what this report means and what should I focus on and what really matters? So we do that as well. We provide training. Paul alluded to that, that 3 or 4 day, half-day sessions to go through the WCAG 2.0 or WCAG 2.1 guidelines and success criteria. We have provided this training to our clients. We train developers, we train testers, we train creative, we train product owners, business owners, we train everybody so that they all understand, WCAG and accessibility and why it's important and what they need to know and what they need to do. So that's another capability. And lastly, Kyle mentioned about the voluntary product accessibility template, the VPAT, especially in government when vendors are looking to provide applications or websites and things to government, they will ask for a VPAT that's been completed, which is really test results for accessibility. We provide those kinds of things as well. So really, when you look at the spectrum of everything, we cover everything with our services. This last one here really talks about where we can get involved and where you should get involved when it comes to accessibility considerations, right? We know that, we all, as testers, we all know that, the earlier you catch defects in the SDLC, the cheaper they are to fix, right? And that 100% applies with accessibility as well. So, it's all new, right? This is all new in the industry. People are starting to figure this out now, and we're trying to educate our clients that, look, you should get us involved early, right during the initial creative stages. Even before that, you should get training. We can train you on what you all need to know. We get involved during creative to make sure that you're designing things the right way. We help with all of the, with building out your wireframes and your mock-ups and your designs to make sure that those are compliant. We help during the build stage to make sure that you're building things the right way. Of course, we do testing. We help with defect remediation. And then we help with ongoing sustainment after the fact. And we also help with building conformant content. So, we can get engaged at all stages of the SDLC and, really help our clients to be on the right path when it comes to accessibility. So feel free to go out there to your clients, when you're doing your work, if you see opportunities, let them know that we can help, and I think that's the main thing, especially with Global Accessibility Awareness Day. We want to get the word out that, building accessible content is important. We've heard today why that is, and certainly we're there to help our clients with that.
Hey, Ali?
Yes, sir.
Do you want to comment a little bit on one of the main objections on the sales side is, oh yeah, we got tools that do this, right? But even
Yes.
WCAG says, you need manual assessment, right? The tools
Yeah.
won't cover it all. So that's usually the first objection. Oh, we got a tool, we got a vendor who covers it for us. We just, fire it through. It takes 10 seconds, to run it through their machine, blah, blah, blah. You want to comment a little bit further on that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you covered it very well, right? Right now, there are a lot of companies out there that feel that with tools, they're good. There are companies that feel alt text accessibility. Yeah, I have alt text. I'm good, right? They don't understand all of the, everything that needs to be done. And there is a misconception that tools can cover everything, that, oh, I can put this accessibility overlay on my page and now my page is accessible. No, none of that works. In reality, tools only get you about 20 to 30% coverage of the guidelines and success criteria. Right now, we're building our own tool that's going to incorporate AI and machine learning to get us further in there. So as you can try and it can help us with manual testing. But at the end of the day, we're talking about accessibility and it's about humans, right? And you need humans involved. And that's a big part of this. So this is what we try to educate our clients with. If you hear similar things out there from your clients when you're working and you raise this, feel free to mention this. And of course, refer them to people like Paul, and myself, and we're happy to talk to them and talk to them about those misconceptions. It's well known. It's on the W3C website that tools can't do it alone. So it's important that clients know that. Drew, thanks for raising that. And you're right. That is usually a statement that we get from our clients. I think that covers what I have. We have a few minutes left. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thank you, Ali. Just want to thank you so very much as usual. Ali, and as I said, I've worked with this man for quite a while now, and he's very informed as well. So thank you so very, very, very much. And I would like to thank all the speakers. Carl, thank you for chiming in and jumping in. And even Elena, I told her that I want to hear your voice today, and she spoke as well. So I'd like to thank everyone. But one thing I want to mention today, which is very, very important. Don't just limit your knowledge to what I just did with just this presentation. No. You can go to W3C or all you have to do, just on your Google, whatever, type WCAG 2.0, WCAG 2.1. That's all you need. And the first link that shows up, click on it. Trust me, that is it. But you can go to W3C as well. Those are the guys that wrote it. And in fact, people like myself, we sometimes chime in and say, okay, for the next one, consider this. And very soon, I believe, hopefully I'm not putting Alex on the spot, QAC would like to be a member, even within the W3C group, so that, so that we can contribute, so that they can hear my input. Because once your company is not back, is not there, they will say, okay, Paul, whatever, don't say anything, right? So that's the thing. It is all about making product accessible to everybody. I told you 16 to 20% of, population, 1.3. Imagine the business side of things, tapping into that untapped resource. That is a lot. Even from money perspective, you have 16% people that you're always ignoring. That is something that you can tell your business people, your salespeople, talk about that. They need to tap into those people. And look, after all this, there is fine associated with this. This is a legal. It has costs associated with this. So any company that is not compliant, in fact, people will start getting fined. So they know that. Somebody told me with client, Paul, they've never done that. But look, don't let your story be the case. Don't be the first one that gets caught. But people in the US have been talking about getting fined. So please, it's very important for us to get our clients involved in this. And any last word from anybody? And Alex Rudolph can also say a thing, and then we'll end at this 1 o'clock.
It's 1 o'clock. I just wanted to say, it's great presentation. Certainly, it goes without saying that what you have done here is very important. I'm glad that we're participating in GAAD. Everything is from God, of course, but it's a GAAD. I think it's very important that we take the time to understand what it is. We take the time to learn. We take the time to be aware. We take the time to be better citizens of this planet, to make sure everybody is included, everybody feels comfortable, and people can go about their daily lives like everyone else, despite potential disabilities. We need to do what's right. We need to be aware of what's going on around us and take care of take care of each other. So again, thank you, gentlemen, for putting this together. Thank you, Tatiana, for putting this together. I know this has been important work. I know you're busy, and again, we should continue staying on this subject. Paul, please update us on a regular basis as new things come about. I'm understanding that the government is going to be cracking down on this and are going to be quite loud about it. Apparently,
Yep.
They're going to expose companies on the news. They're not conforming to the standards. I was quite surprised that TSN, which is a Bell Media company that are talking so much about inclusivity and conformance, etc., to standards, they're not in good shape, which is something that will probably get quite a bit of exposure. So that comes with penalties, etc., etc. So in our case, we are learning more. We are becoming better citizens by being aware, and I'm glad we're doing this. Of course, we'll do this again next year, but let's not wait for be involved. Learn more. Go to the links, and maybe we'll become a member of W3.
Perfect.
I heard that. We have to check. Maybe Alton is already a member, so that's something that we can potentially leverage. Again, thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll keep those coming. We'll keep being informed. We'll keep those lunch and learns, or whatever we want to call them these days. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Great job, guys.
Thanks.